Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm Mark, this is Spiguyver Backpacking, and today we're out here to take a look at the newly re-released Banyan by Dutchware gear. Now this is a slightly changed version from the version that I originally tested and did the videos on. And you guys have seen those videos and you've seen some of the changes that I made, some of the upgrades that I made to it. But today we're going to talk about some of the upgrades that Dutch made to this iteration of the Banyan. So why don't we get right on into this. Sorry about the wind, but we're gonna make this work. Okay, if we start down here on the head end, we can really sit and talk about the pieces that have changed, what's changed about it. Now the hammock body itself hasn't changed. It's still a 1.6 Hexon, very, very comfortable material. Now, the one thing that I have heard, it isn't out on the website yet, but I have heard that Dutch is going to be releasing this in a double layer. So those that want a double layer and want to use a pad inside, that is coming. And I know a lot of people have been asking for that. I know a lot of people have also been asking for a wider and longer version. I don't know whether or not that's coming, but if it does, I will be sure to make sure that everyone is aware of that. All right, so changes. Some of the things that kept this from being released for a long time. Number one was the poles. So Dutch really wanted to make sure that the poles were right. He wanted to make sure that the poles were something he could source readily and that they were the highest quality, that they met his personal standards. And that was the problem. The problem was actually COVID, supply. Really, a lot of the big tent manufacturers had tied up the production lines for Easton and some of the other pole manufacturers out there. And so Dutch had to figure out a way to do it. And so what he ended up going with are these DAC Featherlight PL poles. And so these are now the spreader bars for the foot and head end, and they're lighter, quite a bit lighter. Actually, they are only 6 grams heavier than the Rotalacura carbon fiber replacement ones that I had gotten for my original Banyan. So in my opinion, there's absolutely zero reason to upgrade these poles when you get the new upgraded Banyan, because it comes with these DAC Featherlight poles, which are as strong and as light, essentially, as the Rotalacura ones. And so now you've got these without having to spend an extra $100 to drop 2 ounces. So sourcing these new poles, going from the Dutch poles that he was using or spreader bars that he was using to these ones, saved 2 ounces. Also, he went from the aluminum hardware that he had on the ends to titanium, and it's very noticeable how much thinner this material is, how much less there is there. But what it's also done is he has provided a spot where you can actually release this suspension. So if you were to have something happen where this was to fray, maybe someone came by with a knife or a machete and hacked at your stuff, you can now replace it pretty easily. Whereas before it was a little bit harder. The other thing that you can do is you can actually put your underquilt suspension will go right onto here. It also has the D-rings here for underquilt suspension, so you've got multiple ways to connect it. Depending on what type of underquilt, whatever type of quilts you're using, you can make it happen. Still has the red for head, green for foot. Another change is the suspension itself. So the suspension is now a one-piece suspension, and it has the berries or brummels in here so that it is all one piece. Before it was 2 pieces, and so it kind of got, it could be pulled a little bit in a different direction, and you had to be worried about the way that certain things were on there. So, all right, poles have changed, or spreader bars have changed. The hardware on the ends is now titanium and allows for the removal. The suspension is all one piece, but probably my favorite change, the piece that actually is the reason I didn't have this video out before, was I was waiting for these. So you've got the bones right here. These bones used to be embedded, they used to be spliced into this am steel. And the problem that I found was it made them very rigid. So they were pointed in one direction, and when there was tension on this suspension, they were very rigid. And if you had your suspension a little bit too tight, or if you had these twisted in any way, so you do have the dual ridge lines. if the dual ridgelines were twisted in any way, it put a really bad, weird tension on those bones. And so what ended up happening on mine was I ended up snapping one of them. Here, now you have a spliced in line, the bone is on that, and then the ridge line or dual ridge lines are attached to these. And so they're disconnectable so that you can, put on and off your top cover, you can put on and off ridge lines, you can do whatever you need to do. But it does make it a lot easier and a lot more convenient, and that is the piece that I really like. Additionally, he's included these line locks on the ridge line, and what that allows is for when you put on the top cover, you can now, or bug net, you can slide these to the ends and keep good tension on that so that it doesn't slide in at all. Your bug net or top cover is kept taut the whole time, which is really, really cool. Still all the features, all the D-rings all the way around like on the previous one. So you can use your head end and your foot end storage containers. You can use the dual ridgeline peak shelf or shelf / organizers. And you can still swap on and off top covers, bug nets, or go topless like it is right now. So let's take a look at it with all that stuff installed. All right, so right now, I've got a lot of wind, but I've got this thing set up and I've got all the storage pieces that I use in here. So at the head end, I have the storage here, which has segregated pockets, and then, you can put anything you need in there. Here is the peak shelf, or the shelf, along with the storage pockets on the side, so you can store stuff in there, and you can slide this around, move it wherever you need it. And then at the foot end, it has a couple of pockets in there and then a big pocket. So if I had taken my bug net off and I didn't want it just flopping around, I didn't want it laying up top, I can come down and put it in this bigger pocket. If I had the top cover, I could do the same thing, just kind of throw it in here. And then it's there out of the way, and it's down at the foot end. So it's completely out of the way. Now, the other thing that Dutch did change was on his bug net or top cover. I don't have the new ones, but the new ones where the ridge lines come through have really nice grommets, whereas mine has a hole that was kind of soldered through, and then a 2-inch Velcro strap that kind of goes over the back that covers it up. Works fine. The new one is a little bit more elegant, a little bit more refined, but this one does work fine for me. So what are my thoughts on his changes? Now, for the most part, the changes are awesome. I think that they really are a step in the right direction. There is one change that I do not actually like, and it is on the foot end. So the head end has the bones. Previously, you had bones on both ends, so you could disconnect your ridge line from both ends. Now it is actually spliced through the am steel on the foot end, and then you have the bones just on the one end. Here's where that's a problem, is I want to change out or take off or put on my bug net, but I have this on. This is not the easiest thing to get on. You have to route it through these clips, the double line locks, which this am steel is actually pretty tough to get through there. Then you've got a, 15-inch, 12 to 15-inch section that you have to slide it through a channel. You've got your line locks on here that put everything out. So you actually have to take this off. You have to take this completely off in order to put on your covers. So I love using this, but in order to swap out, now I have to take this completely off. Before, I could disconnect one end, put the foot end on, disconnect the head end, put the head end on, reconnect everything, and it was there. I never had to mess with this. Now, this is in the way, and in order to do it, I've got to move that. Is it a huge deal? Well, if you're just going out on a trip and you know you're going to have this on the whole time, or you're only switching between top cover and bug net once a season, it's probably not that big a deal. But it is kind of extra work, and it took away some of the ease of switching between things. The modularity of these hammocks, of the Chameleon and the Banyan, is one of the things that sets it apart. And I think that this, by going fixed on the one end, has kind of taken that away just a little bit. Okay, so I went and put it all together. I've got the bug net on there. The line locks are spreading it open. I've got the shelf and ridgeline organizer back in there. Everything is set up. It is the way that I would lay in it. And it is kind of a pain. I'll be honest, with it only having the connection points at the head end, it's kind of a pain because you've got to pull everything off, slide it through, put it together in a specific order. So you go through the end of the bug net, then you slide the line locks on, then you have to put the ridgeline organizer on, which what I found is the best way to do it is don't try and slide the end through. The holes on these double line locks are really small. That channel is pretty tight. So what you actually, the best way to do it is to double over the line so that it's a little bit more rigid and slide it through that way. It actually fits through a little bit easier. You've got to kind of crip it down, slide it through, and then double it over longer than the length of the ridgeline organizer. Slide it through, out the other end, through that. Then slide it out, put the next line lock on, then through the other end of the bug net, then connect it. So that's the order it has to go in, otherwise it's not going to be right. But once it is right, if you're going to be using it with the bug net all season long, you set it up once. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt to get it set up, but then it's set up and it's good for really the entire time that you're going to use it. Now, if you're at camp and you want to go topless for a night, all you've got to do really is just disconnect the dog bones or the bones up at the top, the bridge bones. Disconnect those, unzip it, slide the end out, slide the bug net through. You can leave everything else on. You can leave the line locks on, you can leave the ridgeline organizer on, the other end on, and then just unzip it, slide it down, and shove it down into your foot end storage area. So really it's not that bad, but if you're actually changing between a bug net and a top cover, do expect that it's going to take a little bit of time and it's going to be a little bit tedious, and you've got to make sure that you do it in the right order. Overall, I'm still a huge fan of this hammock. I used this hammock on my Tahoe rim trail through hike attempt before we got kicked off due to the fires, and it's been a really good hammock. It was really what got me into bridges. It's what's changed really my camping experience out on the trail. I was using gathered end. I cannot sleep on the ground. I use tents and I sleep a couple hours per night. Gathered end was a little bit better. I definitely slept better, but I am more of a side stomach sleeper. I really toss and turn. I sleep on my back a lot. I sleep on my side. I sleep on my stomach. But a lot of times I fall asleep either on my side or on my stomach. And so moving to a bridge where I'm a little bit flatter and I can actually do that has been a game changer for me. And the Banyan is one of the best ones out there. You're not going to go wrong, and especially now that it's lighter, a little bit easier to switch out the suspension. Yes, changing out the top cover is a little bit more difficult now with only one end having attachment points, but you can definitely overlook that when it comes to the comfort of this. Now, if you're over 6 feet, maybe a little over 6 feet, I think that Dutch listed at 6'2" or 6'3", but for me, I'm gonna say if you're over 6 feet, this probably is something that you're gonna wanna look at waiting until a long comes out, a long version, or looking at something else like a big boy bridge. But this is a great option. Lightweight, easy to use, easy to set up. The double ridge lines, as I've explained before, are absolutely amazing. Really spread it out and give you a lot of interior space. And with the addition of this ridgeline organizer with this loft area, it makes it just absolutely incredible. It is windy out here, guys. I appreciate you sticking with the wind, sticking with me today. If you have any questions, any comments, leave them down below. If you haven't done so before, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I will leave a link so that you can go and find out more about this hammock or any of the other stuff that Dutchware Gear does down below. Appreciate you checking it out. I will see you down the trail.